Welcome back to the Sports Booth YouTube channel. My name is Luke and I'll be taking you through a review of our final from Super Rugby Pacific. So yes, obviously, a massive day yesterday. The final between the Crusaders and the Blues in Eden Park. Blues on this monumental win streak heading into the final, looking like they were unbeatable as the Crusaders really started to hit some form. What a game, what a game, what a finish to a great, successful first season of Super Rugby Pacific, I must say. I think the level and the intensity, it was test match level. To fill up Eden Park, it was great to see. I don't think we've seen a full stadium for Super Rugby, especially in New Zealand, for a while. So, I mean, I think that was a fantastic, I guess, lead up to the game and intro for the game. I guess there was a lot of storylines coming into the game. There was, obviously, like I mentioned, the Blues streak that they had just been on. I think it was 15 straight since that loss to the Hurricanes at the season. And the only loss they had this season was that game against the Hurricanes. And then you had the Crusaders who had, dominated their semi-final. The Chiefs had won the past two games, really were starting to come into some form and looked like they were the best of the Crusaders again. Like, they had been there, they had moments, it was a patchy season, but looking like their best again. So we kind of had the two heavyweights battling it out for the title, and we got the game I think we deserved. But a bit before that, obviously, Australia couldn't handle that there was just two Kiwi teams playing in it. No, I think there's a lot of thought going into Super Rugby Pacific and even just Super Rugby in general, and I think Australia Rugby hasn't done anything wrong yet by just saying that they were looking at other options after Super Rugby Pacific next year. They were contracted in for next year, and then after that, it's kind of an open book where we're going. I think they'd be stupid not to look into every possible solution, because the goal for them is to be able to beat the All Blacks. They haven't been able to do it for 20 plus years, so whatever they're doing at the moment isn't working. So Rugby Australia kind of said that maybe they'll look elsewhere, maybe they'll look at their own domestic competition to compete with AFL and NRL. It was an interesting timing, I guess, of it, would probably be my perspective to start off with, and I know we'll touch more based on our podcast with Husey tomorrow and get an Australian and New Zealand perspective on it. But I think, it's not the end of the world for them to be discussing and looking into this, and it shouldn't be the end of the world even for New Zealand to have this discussion with them. So that was kind of a little side headline before we jumped into the final, but let's jump straight into reviewing that final. So the game in general was probably played at a highest level that you can see, and I know some people may have not thought it was the most exciting game of rugby, but just the tactical and the spatial awareness of the football field, just two teams playing at the highest level. Crusaders just are so superior in all the right areas. Now, the biggest area for them, obviously, in this game was the set piece. Line out, Sam Whitelock was a master, and I guess the issue to beat the Crusaders, and the Chiefs showed it earlier in the year, you have to make them defend and you have to have a whole lot of possession. It was actually the opposite, the other way around. It was the Crusaders to start off with all the possession, all the territory, and they just couldn't seem to break this Blues wall. And, for a long period of time, it was 3-0, and the Crusaders never looked like they were going to break. Then it was 6-0, and then right on the stroke of halftime, a brilliantly taken try, I guess, by Bryn Hall. Bryn Hall's kind of been like a quiet achiever for this Crusaders side. I definitely, watching the past few games, he stood out massively. And I go, man, they've got Triple T, who's played for the All Blacks, was seen as going to be the next kind of Aaron Smith player. You've got Mitch Drummond there, who's also played a game for the All Blacks. So, Bryn Hall stepped up massively, I think, and actually was one of the key components to this run that the Crusaders went on, and he doesn't get a lot of mentions. You say Richie Mwanga, you've got the Will Jordans, but I think Bryn Hall, again, another fantastic game, is just doing all the right things for that Crusaders side, and I guess doesn't get mentioned in the media a lot purely because the amount of talent we have in the halfback region, but 100% deserves to be in that, start to get in that conversation. And I mean, if he can keep that form that he showed at the end of that season, end of this season into next season, there may be discussions around it, and I think, thoroughly deserved for Bryn Hall. So a great try. So we go into halftime 13-0. The Blues just haven't had enough ball, haven't had enough possession to even mount much of an attack, and they really struggled to even find, I guess, territory to get into the right areas, and that was done by the kicking game of the Crusaders. High balls, contested ball, in those wet conditions, they seemed to be coming down, taking them all, and it was just played so well. And then again, you had a couple of really good key kicks from Mo'unga, who just led this Crusaders pack around the field. And I mean, they knew they could put that ball out, and even if it was the Blues line out, they had a chance to win it. So it was a massive advantage there. And then they just played behind that advantage. Second half comes out. Crusaders again managed to go up to 16-0 in front before Finlay Christie finally is able to spark something. And I think, unfortunately, Finlay Christie is really an energizer bunny, and unfortunately probably didn't have his best distribution game. And that wasn't so much his fault. I think the forwards just got dominated. At the ruck and breakdown, you could see it. It was a bit slower from the Blues every time they did it. The Crusaders were good at disrupting the ball and just making it hard. And even when Sam Knock came in, you could see, I don't think it's a knock against knock, but it was just, there's some sloppy passes, and you can say, oh, bad passes, but I just think that Crusader pressure at the breakdown was there and put a lot of pressure on. Then we see, obviously, I think the turning point could have been there where the try was scored. They just needed something else to kind of get them going, and Dalton Papali'i coming on, and I just feel like that was a lot of momentum was lost in these last 3 weeks for the Blues when Dalton went down injured, and he's been a massive miss for them, especially into this run in this final series. And again, you saw his break. You know, there's not a lot on. You got Lester Whanganuku and Cody Taylor, and he splits them, and it's 2 All Blacks now. And he just splits them and sets something up. So they just needed someone to be a game breaker. They couldn't quite do it. And in the end, a great little grubber through from Pablo Matera to Severis to finish. Probably best finisher in New Zealand rugby at the moment, Severis. And the Crusaders win at 21-7. So another title for the Crusaders yet again, which is tough. It's really, really tough. You know, it's tough to get used to, but you know, I'm used to it now. There's 6 on the trot when you look at all the other titles. I know we had COVID seasons, but yeah, it's just a dominant dynasty down there, and you kind of wonder where it's going to stop and who's going to be able to stop it. For the Blues, a great bounce back year. They needed this. New Zealand Rugby needed this. But yeah, another great win by the Crusaders. Looking at some key players, I think Pablo Matera has stepped up, and if he can take this form into Argentina, they could be very scary going forward. Lester Whanganuku stood up again. I mean, the man could literally every touch of the ball sparks something new. If it's an offload or a hard carry, when he gets in around the line, he just dominates and was fantastic again in this final. I also think Richie Mo'unga clearly won the battle of the tens, but it was helped by his forward pack. And everyone will say and make that argument, but you know, he had that forward pack. But if that forward pack can go into, you know, the international season like they did just then with their with all the All Black teams coming in and the Crusaders going into the All Blacks team, yeah, I think he's kind of earned his right to push for that starting position. So yeah, Mo'unga was massive. Another name that again everyone kind of flies under the radar a bit was David Havili. That was a battle of the 212s realistically going out. Let's take Quinn Tupaia out of the equation just for now. Again, he'll be in that equation, but RTS versus Havili, and again Havili showed up and probably dominated, and it was a big statement bringing off to Asashik after 45 odd minutes to bring on Bryce Heem. They just wanted something a bit more direct because they couldn't get any control there, the Blues, and that was the unfortunate thing for how great the season was. They just couldn't get any control and really muster up much of a fight. But that is the Crusaders' defense, and that's Razor again. It's hard. You can sit there and say, they've got the great players, they've got this. But they've got the mix of everything. A great coach who gets them set up well, with a great set of players who know how to execute in big games, and that's what we've got again. Another Crusaders victory where you just go, man, it happened again. And I don't want to take any away from Fozzie or Ian Foster and say his ass is on the line, but Razor's doing this, and that was just a tactical masterclass, just an absolute tactical masterclass by the Crusaders from the line-outs to even the scrums. You saw when Tamatai Williams and Fletcher Newell came on and dominated that All Blacks Blues front row, So it was just the preparation and the tactical masterclass that was the Crusaders was incredible. And it takes a lot to sit back and go, wow. Just wow. How do you beat that? I'm not quite sure. So I guess, that wraps up our first ever Super Rugby Pacific season. Again, we're guaranteed another one next year, and then from there, it'll be very interesting to see what comes up and what goes on. But stay tuned, follow us on all the socials, like and subscribe, and to keep up to date with everything rugby league, all sports that we can kind of get our hands on, especially during the off season into the international season for the All Blacks, the Wallabies, and all those July Test series, and then the Rugby Championship and so on. But for now, I will talk to you later. Cheers. Bye.